Hi, Misha here, and this will probably be the last video I record for 2023, and I definitely wanted to get it done this year because this is the 40th anniversary of Star Wars Return of the Jedi. Now, I'm not saying Return of the Jedi is the best film objectively. I'm saying it's my favorite film subjectively because of my childhood memories and nostalgia. I wasn't born when the original A New Hope, later named, came out. Too young for Empire Strikes Back, but this was the right age for me, especially because my brother recorded it off HBO for me, so I had a VHS of it, and I have very fond memories of playing with the original toys and watching it on lazy Sunday afternoons after church. Also, this year, I received, and this just came out, the Endor Rebel Commando. Again, objectively, I'm not saying this is the best figure of 2023, but subjectively, this is my favorite. I was looking forward to him and really not disappointed. In fact, he's only the second figure ever, the first being the Hoth Trooper, that I bought two of, although for the second one I waited for a sale. So all I want to do to kind of cap this year off is talk about the Endor Strike Team. How it was formed, its mission, who was members, their equipment, what went right, what went wrong, and look at all the 6-inch Black Series figures that kind of contribute to the mission here. Again, beginning with one of my two commandos, and I've kind of accessorized each of these figures, at least for this video, a little bit uniquely. So we'll see how it goes. Just having some fun, hanging out on this pre-New Year's weekend. Hope everyone's doing okay. Thought we would end the year more of a high fun note after the black box I did. Sorry if the black box was a bit of a downer. Sometimes I just need some self-therapy, and talking about things, especially here on the personal channel, really helps me. So you guys bearing with me and supporting helps me too. So for that, I wanted to do something fun to wrap up the year. Again, talking about my favorite film of the Star Wars saga and my favorite Black Series out of 2023. And no, the price doesn't bug me because wait for them to go on sale. And there's my stomach. I'm also waiting for lunch, so this is a great thing to do while waiting. So let's dive in, going back to 4 ABY, after Battle of Yavin. This all begins not long after the defeat at Hoth, when Bothan's spies bring news of a second Death Star under construction, and it's being built around the forest moon of Endor, sometimes called the Centurion Moon, and it's protected by a shield generator, and it's not ostensibly operational yet, but they have to strike quickly. And the initial planning is done by General Crix Nadine. Now, the rebellion, of course, the Rebel Alliance, was a hodgepodge of various security, police agencies, planetary defense forces. You had some Marines, like we saw in A New Hope, and you had quite a few Imperial defectors because, again, the Empire was the quote-unquote lawful government, so not everyone working for them was evil. And it was actually one of these defectors, General Tantor, that provided critical information to General Nadine and actually would serve throughout the entire mission as coordinator between the surface and the orbital flotilla, working and relaying from the recently stolen shuttle Tydirium, which was a Lambda T4A class shuttle. pretty modern military shuttle with 6 to 8 laser cannons for defense, shields, and capable of holding a command crew of up to 6 in the cockpit and neck area, although it could be operated but just by 2, and up to 20 troops in the back, or up to 4 VIPs in more appointed staterooms. Just giving you that background so you kind of get an idea of the size of the Lambda shuttle and what they had to work with, because the plan was to use the stolen Imperial codes, of course, to sneak past the shield generator, and therefore the strike team was going to have to fit on board the shuttle, including all of their equipment. So while the shuttle itself was pretty large for a single unit, they couldn't send in a whole company, even a whole platoon, theoretically. They were going to have to work with a large squad, or maybe a light strength platoon. And originally it was to be commanded by General Lockhart. However, not too long before the strike was to take place, Lockhart was killed in an operation, meaning that the primary commander, be it a major or a general, was not available. So what was Crix to do? Well, coincidentally, another rebel hero was recently defrosted and was taken aboard Home 1 for medical checks and recovery. And so it wouldn't be long before Solo would be offered a commission full-time in the Rebel Alliance as a general. Before, he'd been a freelancer, which not uncommon, but he had the bounty on his head. Well, with that out of the way, with Jabba literally out of the way, he was free to take the position, and it was pointed out at Echo Base he was a natural leader, and so heck, why not? He was a risk taker, a leader. He had experience as an Imperial officer. He had experience infiltrating Imperial facilities. He was offered command of the strike team and really full authority to form it and work out the general specifics of the mission. So he began with a friend and acquaintance that survived Hoth, Major Durlin, who would be nominally the commander of the unit itself on the ground. Solo would be the mission commander, planner, commander, overall in charge, and again, General Tantor would be the coordinator, the liaison, but Major Durlin would be the actual platoon/squadron commander. And he would not be the only survivor of Hoth to join up. Solo also looked to the Special Forces, specifically the 32nd Commando Group, as well as the famous, sometimes infamous, Pathfinders, aka the Trek Specs. I'd love to say the Pathfinders were the best of the best, and they were for what they did. They were also the most irregular, unconventional. The Center Commando was already trained to live off the land, survive, work in small groups, be stealthily put into situations, sabotage. Pathfinders took it a step further. Most of these grew up on harsh worlds. They had wilderness experience from a young age. They had decades of military experience or police experience, or maybe they were previous bounty hunters, or maybe they were just mysterious strangers who no one knew their past. Either way, they were skilled in stealth and reconnaissance, getting in, getting out. They weren't really in it for direct stand-up fighting. In fact, they were usually pretty lightly armed and armored. In fact, they rarely used much armor at all. Usually just a helmet and some camouflage gear, a poncho, a ghillie suit. Some were trained as sharpshooters. They would always carry, of course, a blaster or two, and they usually would at least carry 2 thermal detonators or grenades, and usually a survival pack and equipment. But other than that, they were pretty light. They wanted to blend into the land more than stand out. So really perfect for this mission. So you get a mix of commando standards and pathfinders, all drawn from the special forces, and you would have an eclectic group chosen, including this interesting individual here. Listed on the roster is Lieutenant Nick Sant, although many suspect that might have been an alias. After Major Derlin, the next highest ranking officer was Major Raven Thorne, who was taken from the Special Forces contingent. We already talked about Lieutenant Sant here. He was classed as a naturalist, guide, just generally speaking, badass, quite frankly. There would be 2 other lieutenants. You would have Grieve, who was another guide / naturalist, who also doubled as a sharpshooter. And you had Lieutenant Page. Page was the intelligence person, the reconnaissance person, really meant to achieve what they could on the ground because, well, they're going in with limited intel. And again, he was drawn from the more technical spec ops branch of things. And some of the equipment they would be issued, in addition to packs, ponchos, and camo helmets, they would have pretty low frequency comm links. The Pathfinders really weren't keen on using comm links, but it was anticipated that the team might have to split up, and well, there you go. They also had low power scramblers themselves, as well as low power scanners to try to eavesdrop in on Imperials without being detected. And they would all carry demolition charges, typically thermal detonators or proton grenades, and 1 to 2 blasters as standard, but we'll kind of dip back in there. That plus survival gear, canteens, food packets, basic med kits, is really about it. Moving to the non-coms, we had 2 demolition expert sergeants. We had someone who would take point, as well as another dedicated pathfinder. Then we move down to the corporals. At this level, the team has a medic. It has a more dedicated sharpshooter, so we have a total of 2. We have a slicer, so a hacker basically, and the final corporal, Kinseric, would be charged with drawing up the rear, protecting that flank, and the team would be rounded out by 3 more privates, first class, just general commandos, badass, kind of moving around. Everyone was volunteer, absolutely volunteer, which is why you get rather high-ranking and experienced officers. The ground team itself would have 16 members, plus General Tanter being liaison, for a total of 17 riding in the back of the shuttle Tydirium. And as for the command crew, well, we have General Solo, but we're getting right up to the mission briefing, and he hasn't picked his command crew. Of course, one obvious pick would be Solo's first mate and bestest boy ever, Chewbacca. And we're not talking about Lumpy or Itchy or any of those. This would be his co-pilot. As far as I know, no rank was really assigned. He's just listed as first mate on the mission manifest. He would be equipped, of course, with his bowcaster, traditional Wookiee weapon, that was handcrafted. Should point out that other Wookiees would take part in the Battle of Endor, even on the surface, once reinforcements would arrive. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. And the whole rebellion, in part, was created to protect the rights of Wookiees and other non-human species because of just how xenophobic the Empire was. So it's only fitting that aliens would take place. Nub was another rather famous one up in orbit, a Celestin. And of course, everyone's favorite fishman, Mr. It's a Trap, one of the OG online memes. Admiral Akbar was commanding the entire fleet. So yeah, Chewbacca was the first command crew. Next would be Leia Organa, who had by this time achieved the rank of general in the Alliance, although her specialties mostly relied in the more diplomatic areas. Not sure why you would need a diplomat on a mission like this, but hey, we're getting the OG crew back together for one final romp. It's almost as if people want to see everyone together again. Feel like someone, JJ, could take lessons from that. Rounding out the command crew, and literally a last-minute addition, we have Commander Luke Skywalker. Kind of makes me wonder why he kept his rank of commander while everyone else is getting promoted, but then again, he's kind of in his edgy will I, won't I become a Jedi phase, so yeah, who knows. And we see this throughout the mission. He's listed as Jedi Knight. On the other hand, someone should have reminded him how the Jedi Knights ended during the Clone Wars. If only there was someone on the team that was there to kind of give him advice. Oh well. So those are the command crew, or at least the human members. And of course, Luke wasn't going to get to go without his faithful metal sidekick, R2-D2. And besides, he's a Swiss Army droid. Having an astromech around just makes a lot of sense. And he's got spunk, and probably more combat experience than most humans alive. So that droid makes sense. Although, I'm not sure why you need a protocol droid on an attack mission, especially when everyone's wearing camo, and he is shiny silver and gold. Oh well, I think they just knew if they left him behind, they'd never hear the end of it, and he's already enough of a nag as it is. But yeah, why would you need an interpreter droid, especially one that still has some hut slime and stank on him? But you're getting him. Maybe Home 1 just didn't want him left behind. Gee, I wonder if he'll come in useful at all. Oh my. So, 6 members, counting the droids. And that gives us a grand total, everyone included, of 23. And that is our Endor strike team that leaves from Home 1 on the stolen shuttle Tidarium with the stolen Imperial codes. And after a little bit of a hair-raising adventure with Chewbacca flying, casual but not too casual, they are allowed to penetrate the shield and land. And I always thought it was kind of odd that no one seems to have been there at the pad to greet them. Either way, the team would actually very soon split up. And with that, that seems like a good time to talk about the weaponry. First, R2, he's a weapon. He's a sentient metal weapon. Enough said. Just ask many B1 battle droids. As for the Commandos and Pathfinders, one of their standard weapons was the Blastech A280. And we have a couple of variants of it, but the original A280 was considered a long-range weapon. In fact, it was used by the sharpshooters. It had a magnified optic, at least some of them did, and was quite powerful. It was heavy at 6.5 kilos, but it had a very good range of 300 meters, especially with the scope, and it had good penetration at that distance, so it could punch through armor, and it was considered a very sturdy, robust weapon. And in fact, Blastech had kind of hoped this might be a replacement for the DLT or DTL-20 that the Empire used, but it never came to pass. And as the Empire took hold, these were used by some police and security forces, made their way onto the black market, and many ended up in the hands of the rebels, who used them at Hoth, and then several were taken to Endor. But they were a bit loud and heavy and good at long range, but they did have a propensity for a little bit of a slow rate of fire because of the heavier blaster bolt. They did consume Tabana gas and energy quite quickly, so they weren't the only weapon carried. We'll talk about the DH-17 in a minute, but first, several commandos, depending on their exact job and position, carried E-11, but these weren't just standard E-11s like stormtroopers would typically have. They were specially modified for more quiet operations, so they were considered suppressed or silenced. Also, they did what they could to improve their accuracy. And sometimes personal arms were carried. Hey, Nick, what you got there? That looks old. Looks like an old pistol, Nick. Why would you have an old pistol? And while General Solo was carrying another A280, he really preferred his traditional DL-44. This was a very popular sidearm. Yes, in the Rebellion, quite a few of these were around, but also with smugglers, pirates, whatever. It was powerful, and it was easily customizable. Although it had a somewhat short range of about 75 meters, and it could overheat if rapid fired. Some would actually modify these a bit for better cooling, but one had to be mindful of their shots. Another common sidearm seen both at Hoth and Endor was the somewhat similar DL-21. A little bit faster rate of fire, wider spread, but less accurate for what it's worth. I also want to know where the general got this snazzy coat and why no one else got it. Also, why are you wearing a helmet? Oh, that's right. Can't mess up the hair. You should still have a helmet on, though. It's no excuse, especially because you might be riding bikes. Moving on to General Organa. She has the DH-17, another very common, very popular large pistol or small carbine used by the Alliance, the Empire, and several others. This was actually originally designed to be safely used on board ships and stations. It was actually quite powerful, enough to usually punch through armor, but not enough to punch through ships' hulls. And was quite a bit lighter than the 280 at about 1 kilo, but it could still have about 100 shots before the energy needed to be replaced, and up to 500 shots before the Tabana gas cartridge had to be replaced. Some were fitted with lower power scopes. It wasn't a terribly long-range weapon, about 120, maybe 150 meters in skilled hands. That's close enough for shipboard, and as it turns out, close enough for Endor in the jungle, in the forest. The only downside here, again, in semi-auto mode, these were fine, but in full auto, it had a very high rate of fire. This would chew through its energy very quickly. It also could lead to overheating, so controlled bursts were the name of the game. But if you were to run out, again, personal weaponry, Leia has her traditional sidearm, or rather, something very similar. In fact, she made this sidearm so famous that it was often nicknamed the Princess Blaster. Originally, she actually carried the Defender, a longer barrel version, but for this mission, with size and weight being a concern, she went to a similar but smaller, lighter model, the X30. This is classed as a target pistol, so it has very precise shots, but relatively low power, and it can't hold especially many before energy and gas needs to be changed out. But was a dependable little gun. Interestingly, this actually started off as more of a sporting gun used by nobility, going back to Alderaan and other places. So not explicitly a military gun, but hey, it shoots blaster bolts, so it'll do. It'll do. And now we come to Commander Skywalker, sporting another famous Blastech product, the A280 CFS. And at first this might not look very similar to the 280, but it actually is. This is the lightest pistol form, designed for relatively rapid fire, relatively powerful, but close range. But anyone who knows the Blastech catalog knows that it is convertible. It's built on the same basic frame and chassis as the 280 and the 280C. In fact, it's a direct derivative of the 280C. Now, the 280C was much like the original 280 or 280A, but designed for slightly less powerful shots but better rapid fire performance. The next step up for the covert Special Forces version of the 280 is you can attach a shoulder stock. I should mention that the DL-44 had a shoulder stock available too. This is for a little bit better aim. Also, the stock provides for more Tabana gas and storage for that kind of thing, so more sustained fire. Not a whole lot better range. See, it just splits apart, but 150 or so yards, maybe 180 in skilled hands. But what if you need to reach out more? The next modular components are an optional 2-power scope, some have 4, and extended barrel with accessory rails. This will give you a range almost as good as the standard 280, 200 meters easy, 250 with skill. And it does retain the 280C's higher rate of fire. However, because of the modular nature and the less sturdy frame compared to the original 280, the bolts it shoots at range aren't quite as powerful. In fact, they're a little bit kind of light, frankly. But hey, at least it means it doesn't chew through energy and Tabana gas as fast. But yeah, these were very preferred by Rebel Commandos since before the Battle of Scarif, and were a very specialized weapon. Essentially, when they're fully assembled, it's the same as a 280C. Just this was the covert Special Forces variant. And these were seen in a few hands on Endor. But of course, Commander Skywalker really didn't prefer blasters by this point. He was only armed with this for most of the battle. And to be fair, he's a lot more effective at using his lightsaber now that he constructed himself than he was before. It's just the jury's still out on if he's a Jedi Knight or still a Padawan. If only someone had been around who had experience with other Jedi in the past. Either way, that's the team. I shouldn't have to say that C-3PO was not armed, and Chewbacca, like I said, had his bowcaster. Never leave home without it. So what about the mission itself? Well, you know, the best laid plans. They never survived combat, and it wasn't 5 minutes into the mission when things went wrong. In fact, a scout trooper heard General Solo. They had to chase after him so he would report. So Solo, Skywalker, Organa, and the droids would take off along with Chewie, and the team was left behind. Basically, they split up, and we'll catch up with the command crew in a minute. But Major Duran is ordered to rendezvous at 0300, so 3 in the morning, to begin, well, scouting out to set charges to blow the bunker. And so for this point, we'll kind of see what happens to our group here of 16 soldiers. Again, Major, or I should say General Tantor is the liaison, so I don't know if he's with him. I don't think so. I think he remained behind. So, yeah. What did they get up to? Well, they successfully find their way near the bunker and set up camp for the night, and all goes to plan until nightfall. During the first watch, the first sleep cycle, an AT-ST approaches the commandos, and kind of like with the scout that discovered the general, they have to do something about it. So they get to work, and the whole point of this team was to be flexible. Everyone had a couple of different duties, and everyone was pretty lightly armed except for the charges designed to blow the bunker, although they did have one E-Web heavy repeater, and they had one canister launcher. And it's actually this launcher that they used to disable the AT-ST, filling it with smoke. They also shot out its nav lights and captured the pilot and kept him on the radio reporting, "All's well, how are you?" And so they kept their position. So they were able to make the rendezvous, no problem, because they're skilled soldiers. Some of them very skilled. Well, the command crew had a more interesting evening, including a very pleasant dinner, and made some new friends. And they too would meet up early in the morning, and they would get some assistance. It's Ewok time. Specifically, Paploo. After a bit of an interesting start, they made friends with the inhabitants of Bright Tree Village, who agreed to help them the next morning locate the bunker. So a small little scouting party of Ewoks went with the command crew and the commandos, and actually informed them of a secret back door, and it was only guarded by 4 or 5 troopers. And then old Paploo here decides to steal a speeder and make a distraction, which lures away all but really one guard. And that guard's no problem. In fact, they take his uniform, Lieutenant Nick Sant does, almost as if he'd been putting on a similar style of uniform for years in the past, and so is a faux Imperial, and this allows them to secure the back door of the bunker. And then the team, with all their charges, especially the demolition experts, mostly go inside, and they think they've got it in the bag, which is good because the fleet's arriving over the planet any time now, according to General Tantor. I should mention that at this point, the next day, Commander Skywalker has abandoned and turned himself in voluntarily, surrendered to the Imperials. Kind of like how he went off after Hoth for a while. Maybe we're starting to see why he's still just a commander. So he's out of the team now. He's up doing Death Star things. But just as they're getting in the bunker and setting charges, the Emperor himself springs his trap. Of course, as we know, it was all a trap. And there's an entire legion of what he considers his best troopers. So, as the Imperial reinforcements rain down, everyone is captured. Fatalities are light. Thankfully, stun is still a thing in this universe. But everyone's captured. And this is actually where R2 kind of comes in. A few things happen Leia gets injured, blah blah blah, guns pointing around. R2 is brought over to hotwire the door, and Chewbacca, well, he commandeered his very own AT-ST. Wonder how much fur he got around in there. So even with the reinforcements, yeah. But of course, as it would turn out, because plots were written well back then, the seemingly useless character actually is useful. At first, C-3PO distracts the Imperials as they're holding the members at gunpoint. And here's the thing. The Ewoks really love him. So, unbeknownst to everyone, they'd been hiding in the shrubbery. So we get the return of Paploo. But of course, it wasn't just him. It wasn't even his small little group of friends that came with him to the bunker. Yeah, it was pretty much everyone. Including Leia's little buddy, Wicket. He's small, he's a pint-sized Ewok, but he was good with a bow and a stabby spear. And yes, all the weapons are about that primitive. Even some Ewoks that weren't sure about these outsiders came around, like Tebow here, who was a friend of Wicket's, and Paploo. Hey, when you're in a small village and you're all furry, you all become friends. And so everyone was there. By the way, he has one of the most advanced weapons they have, kind of a Stone Age knife. And they do have a glider they use too. And if you think it's a little absurd that small furry things with, well, axes and spears and bows can destroy a Imperial Legion, or at least give them a run for their money, really it's not. Basically, Ewoks are miniaturized Wookiees. They're strong. They have a lot better musculature and bone density for their size, and this is their terrain. And well, they still have assistance from over a dozen rebels with blasters, and they obviously can steal some of the Imperial gear, like the speeder we saw Paploo get on. Either way, it's an interesting thing. Now keep in mind too, they weren't fighting like heavily armored and armed stormtroopers. These were scout troopers, which had pretty light armor, especially in the joints. Plus, stormtrooper armor wasn't designed to protect against kinetic blows, blunt force, and spears and knives and stuff. And they weren't heavily armed either. They had mostly small blaster pistols or E11s. Very few E-webs around. Even those that did, they weren't all that useful, including the smaller AT-STs. The larger AT-ATs really weren't that useful on Endor, except as command posts. Either way, it's a big battle. Some Ewoks die. A lot of stormtroopers die. We know this because at the end of the film, they're using stormtrooper helmets as drums. Those helmets were empty. You know how they got empty. So, even though it is a fight, a stand-up fight, the Imperials are overconfident, and the Ewoks are fighting for their home, and the Rebels are fighting for their friends. They realize if they don't blow this generator, well, their entire fleet's about to get wiped out. So, they do. They break back through, again with help from R2. They set charges, thanks to the specialist on the team, and they blow the holy living shit out of the bunker, and not to mention the Emperor's ego. And I guess even old Skywalker, who had by this point shed his poncho, more's the pity, did his part up there too. And, you know, there's Lando and Akbar. Credit where credit's due, I suppose. But their main part of the battle ended really when everyone else's began, when the destruction of the Death Star run began. The Ewoks and the Commandos would mop up the Imperials, but after they failed their mission, really the heart went out of them, so fighting in the immediate area was over by the end of the day. In fact, the Death Star was destroyed by the end of the day. This would lead directly to General Solo returning to the fleet, handing command of planet operations to Major Durlin, and therefore Lieutenant Page would be given direct command of the strike team itself. And they would continue operations for the next day, taking a major Imperial outpost and continuing to do mop-up ops for days, even some weeks remaining. Now, reinforcements did come down as quick as they could from the Rebel fleet, so once they were in orbit, they were able to send some shuttles down and help reinforce the beachhead that the strike team had established. So it wasn't like they had to hold it on their own. That's the thing about Pathfinders. They were meant to establish something, not hold it. So they were reinforced. This is when I said other Wookiees were on Endor. The ledgers say that a few of them would come down with the assault teams. And this is why the leadership would change around. There would be casualties, of course, but considering the major victory by destroying the second Death Star, not to mention the Super Star Destroyer Executor, and multiple standard Imperial Star Destroyers and cruisers and TIE fighters, it was definitively worth it. So the team was considered very much a success. Weeks later, they would have a ceremony on Home 1. They would be awarded, some were promoted, and then the Endor strike team was officially disbanded, with its members returning to the commando units, the Pathfinder units, the Special Forces units, from which they came. So now, with the story out of the way, let's talk about the figures in the real world and some of the light accessorizing or modifications that I've done. And yes, Nick was Rex. That's what I'm going with. After all, not all retconning is bad. And everyone likes Rex, and strangely enough, doing this doesn't even destroy the canon. Extended canon never really gave Nick Sant a backstory, as if they were waiting on it. And this is really funny, because everyone else got one in Star Wars. Everyone. Except Sant, for some reason. It seems very appropriate to me that this video will probably go up on a Sunday afternoon. Like I said, I have good memories of watching all the films. But I don't know why. Maybe it's the foresty thing of Endor, but then, I don't know. Return of the Jedi always seemed like a Sunday film to me. Empire Strikes Back was always a night film. Not sure why again. And I don't know why either, but A New Hope always seemed like a holiday film. But not the holiday special. Anyway, the troops. I know this guy's come under a little fire for being a quote-unquote deluxe. The truth is, when the Hoth Trooper was made, it was pre-COVID money. This was made and sold after. That's just what it is. Everything's gone up. That's a reality, be it food, cars, housing, rent, and yes, unfortunately, figures. That said, I would rather them charge more and give a good figure than charge less and cut corners. And I don't feel like they cut corners here. Are there always a couple of more things they could have done? Sure. But you get both guns, you get removable straps, you get a removable backpack. The helmet, the hat is fixed, but you do get two face plates. I added the goggles. That's really the only change I made to this figure. I had a spare set of goggles from, I think, a Solo figure. Thought they went on well and kind of seemed like something I might use. But you can buy these, and I do like kind of troops. And this isn't a specific character as such, so you can buy a lot of these, customize them, and that's fun. I do like how the secondary blaster kind of hangs off the pack. Even the vest is a separate piece. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And I think it was nice that we got something for the 40th anniversary. This is the same blaster that the Hoth came with. It's okay. There are a couple of different props we see. Some are more MP44 based, some are more AR-15 based, you know, but at this 112 scale, it'd be hard to tell the difference, so I get it. I get it. But no, very happy with him. If not an A+, a solid A for sure to me. And this is, again, the guy with the regular face plate on. But I think we all knew we were going to get a couple of these so we could do the old man face. I saw some criticize that his hair in the back is still, brown, and his beard is white. Speaking as someone who has a white beard and still regular colored hair, it happens. Either way, that's a true nitpick. They weren't going to give you a whole new head. I don't actually like swappable heads. I don't like pulling the head off my figure. I feel like something's going to break or get loose. Controversial opinion, maybe. And I always knew I wanted to give at least one of these guys an E11. The reason I gave him the newer style with the thing on the side, these won't fit in the holsters on the Stormtrooper, so I have more of these just floating around. But to acknowledge the whole Rex thing, I actually gave him one of the old clone era pistols, the DC-17 pistol in a holster, and it just goes on. So I mean, you can really customize these, and you could give one an E-Web cannon. You could put more demo charges on one. You can have a lot of fun. In fact, you could buy as many as a dozen of these and set them up differently if you wanted. And since these do have popping off faces, theoretically, you could 3D print faces and whatnot. One of the criticisms I've seen is these don't use the same exact face as base as the Hoth Trooper. That's because the hats are very different. If you tried to make this head take the Hoth Trooper face, it would look weird. I agree with their choice to make each one custom fit to the head. It's much more natural. If you tried to have a universal face, you're going to get kind of a weird look. Something's going to be undersized, oversized, whatever. It is what it is. It is what it is. But no, I like this guy, including his little backpack. Speaking of have kind of customized these a little bit, Luke. I, at least for this video, gave him the backpack from one of the Obi ones. This is a neat backpack because it actually has storage inside. Very few Black Series backpacks do. And it's reasonably big. And that's good because this Endor Luke, I really like him with the poncho, but he has no storage. Not just for a pistol, but not even for his lightsaber, which I think he really needed a lightsaber hook. That's the big ding against this. Also, I gave him the binoculars from Farm Boy Luke because they kind of just clip onto his belt. Thought it was appropriate for a trooper. And that's what I did here. I tried to make him more just a generic scout trooper officer thing a bit. I don't know, just customizing a little while, change it around. And another ding, you can't lift the hood on his poncho. It's actually sewn down. But then again, he's got a hat, which is not removable. That probably sounds like I don't like him. It's not true, because we have so many other Lukes without hats or with robes or anything, so that's okay to have this one as a dedicated kind of indoor biker scout Luke. Although, yeah, I do wish he came with a lightsaber hook. That's the only real deficiency with him. But it does have the newer style lightsaber with the bigger peg, and the canvas or cloth rather poncho is neat. But I think he looks nice with the backpack on it. Fits him well and whatnot. It's kind of scooched over a little bit, but is that it, the video? But yeah. But I could put his lightsaber in this backpack. I can put the pieces to that blaster in here. So it seemed fun for the video. We'll see. That's the nice thing. You can change him around as much as you want. Oh, this even, I didn't notice it. It even has the little kind of tubing on the side. It's part of the mold, but it's a very similar backpack and style to the Endor Trooper, so I think it actually kind of matches the theme. Our next one, I only really did one customization. For Endor Leia, she doesn't come with the DH-17, although some other versions of Leia do. Seemed appropriate. She only comes with the Princess Blaster, but the difference is, whereas the earlier ones did have the long barrel version, the Endor Leia has the short barrel. Now these were both based on the same little 22 target pistol. This is a Vostok, but it's shorter in Return of the Jedi. So I had a couple of extras of these. I think one came with like Ewok Village Leia, and the only reason I bought it is I found it for like $6, so why not? And the whole figure, not just the pistol. And so I trimmed the barrel down on this. Probably put a little dab of paint on it, but it mostly stays in the holster. And you can actually tell because the long barrel version actually pokes out the bottom of the holster, so you can tell it's a shorter one. So yeah, I did a little customization. It's easy to do. You just kind of chop off the shroud at the front sight. But that's more appropriate. Easy thing to do, even for me, who's not a big customizer. It would have been kind of neat if she did come with a second blaster, because just coming with a tiny pistol isn't a whole lot. But she does have the poncho and the holster. On the other hand, again, no removable helmet. But again, that's okay, because we have plenty of other figures, so that's fine. By the way, the DH-17s that we see in the film are actually partially made from Sterling guns with a lot of specialized custom parts. We see them from A New Hope onwards. It's one of the most common guns. And actually, next we have someone I did need to alter. Endor Solo is pretty much perfect as it is. I just gave him a blaster that came from the other Endor Trooper when I give him the E11. Why not? He's got his DL-44 and a holster. These do fit a little tight. Not as bad as the original A New Hope Solo, but has the straps. I don't like pulling it in and out a lot. But, I mean, this trench coat's pretty cool. Kind of wish I could just buy extras. If I ever find this figure for like $6, I'll buy another one just for the trench coat to give to someone. But it's actually got seams and a collar, and it is funny to me he doesn't have a hat, but no, he didn't have a hat. So all these Endors, Han, Leia, Solo, they just basically come with one accessory, lightsaber, pistol, and then a cloth soft goods thing, but that's okay. And these are all three have been re-released for the 40th anniversary, but no real changes, although we did get a new Luke in the final battle version, so that was nice. But he was not on Endor. And I'm not really talking much about articulation because it's just not really what I do. Again, I grew up with 5 POA, so anything's great to me. I still think the original G.I. Joe 3 3/4 have great articulation, but what do I know? Actually, speaking of articulation, the Chewie I grabbed here, I forget exactly which variant this is. I don't have too many of them. Oop, his thing's coming off. At least you see it is detachable. His satchel and his bowcaster, which can mount on his back as well. Yep. I guess I'm forgiving over the articulation on this one because he is a good size. Again, compared to the Chewies we had in the 80s, he's great. The one in the 80s looked like some kind of just strange brown man. He was just kind of skinny and whatnot. So yeah, compared to that, this guy's this is great. But yeah, you can peg that into his back, at least on some of these. There was a Return of the Jedi Chewie, but he was one with the chain and specific to Jabba's palace, and it's the same mold, and yeah. I'm cool with the couple I've got. I've got him, I've got the one that came with the C-3PO that comes in pieces. That's about it. that is about it. So, speaking of really figures that don't change, and since we did mention C-3PO, or rather I did, and you're here, here he is. I think this is the archive edition. This isn't the one that comes apart, but they're very similar. There's a few neat features. I mean, yeah, he's stiff on articulation, because he always was, but I do like how the pistons do move in his arms, at least in theory. This one might be stiff. Other ones I've got do move better. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about it. You get what I'm saying. But hey, Biscuit is there, and he's one of the few figures that comes with no accessories, but then again, what would he come with? An oil bath? Actually, I say that, I do have an idea. If they wanted to re-release him for Return of the Jedi, they could have given him that little wooden chair. There wasn't a whole lot to it. In fact, it could have been something you put together if it came in the box with him, but that would have been kind of neat. But I'm happy we had the one that came apart, because that was my first C-3PO as a kid. He was the one from Empire Strikes Back that you would pull the arms and the legs off of. I don't know if I even ever had the original A New Hope one where you couldn't. Maybe I'm forgetting. But it does have pretty good articulation, considering. But whereas he hasn't changed much, his counterpart surely has. This is an all-new R2-D2. They came out this year. I really didn't mind the original one, but one thing I did hate about it, a lot of people didn't like the size, and it's fine, I guess, but the leg really did bug me, how you had to twist the dome to move the leg. I do like you just pop it up now, and it's articulated, and it locks in quite well. And your regular legs move. Yeah, pretty standard. But of course he has all his attachments too. And I'm a big fan of storage on any of my characters. I like backpacks, I like holsters, I like everything here together. So I do like that with this R2, if I can do it here. One of the things might have fallen out. But you store his accessories in there. Let me see what's going on there. There we go. Yeah, what had happened, and I've had trouble with this one because it's one of the larger, the little scope accessory, it came off and was kind of lodging. But all I had to do, and I was kind of curious, I knew it would happen with these, and I figured they had a easy out, and they do. If it happens to you, just shake it around, and I turned it upside down, and I guess it fell out of the way and let me pull it up and fell out. But yeah, and these each have their own little thing, and I probably just don't have it plugged in exactly perfectly right. But I really do like this because the previous R2s, all these little accessories, some of them were inside him, which is fine, but the ones that plugged in, you just had loose, and that's just inviting getting lost. So now, and he comes with all this. He's got the welder, the claw, the radar, the sensor dish. Yeah, I think that's supposed to go in a different notch. I'll mess with it later. But each one fits in and go in any better than they have a right to. And now we know if one kind of falls out of socket, all you have to do is just take it. But no, the new R2 is pretty great and quite a bit bigger. So that's another one along with the Rebel Trooper. Not a new character, but a whole new figure. Another all-new figure that came out very early in 2023 for this film was Wicket. Strangely enough, we had not had a Wicket in the Black series before, and it's good to have him. And even though he's small at a regular price, he actually comes with quite a few accessories. You have a spear, you have a bow with removable arrow, and you have some other things that I've actually given to other Ewoks because he can't hold them. And plus he has a removable head thingamajig, and he's actually quite articulated for his size. I certainly wasn't disappointed, and he came in very early for me. early in the year. But I wanted to get all the Ewoks. Or was it? I can't remember. They all came in early in the spring, so I can't remember who came first. But I was waiting to get all the 3 of them we did receive. And I have fond memories of having the Ewok figures as a kid. Can't remember how many they released, but 4 or 5, I think. And I remember these removable things. They were more rubbery on the originals. These are semi-hard. But who doesn't like Wicket, or at least the actor who played him, right? Next up, let's talk Paploo. He's the opposite of Wicket. He just came with this staff or fork, big fork. So I actually gave him a couple of the extra bits and bobs that I had. Figured why not. It's a good way to keep them. Again, I like storage, so. And so he was full price too, and that might seem annoying, but what's nice is he was released by himself. Before, you could get him, but only with not just a speeder, but a big, like, Comic-Con exclusive Endor pack. So, well over $100 just to get this little Ewok. Was he the first Ewok they made? I think so. But it's just nice we could get him for, I think I paid $19.95. Let's try to think if that removes. No, it's got the little horn here. Don't think that does. No, I don't think. Sometimes I'll have stuff pre-installed and you have to play that guessing game. No. If it's in there good, but I don't think it removes. Either way, it's nice to have more than 1 Ewok. But what's better than 2? Well, 3. And here we have Timo, or Tebow, or Tico. And he came with 1 spear, and I gave him another one. Hey, he might run out, you know. That came, I believe, with the Ewok Village Leia. Kind of fits in the webbing fine back here. And then he has this thing. Maybe it's a hatchet? I'm not sure. Then he has a horn, which makes sense for his character. But it doesn't remove. That's okay, though. What is neat, though, and maybe makes him my favorite Ewok, although it's hard to say, I do like the bow, is he does have a removable knife. And that comes pre-installed. So you get a fixed horn, but a removable knife, and you get a spear and a spear axe thing. Again, not bad on the accessories. Oh, and you can remove the headdress or whatever on him too. Now, I really feel like the people that designed these are like me and probably grew up with Ewoks and knew that they had to bring their A game, and I feel like they have. And I like that the fur, just like on Chewbacca, is all textured. And even though these are smaller than Chewie, they probably all have better articulation. So this was released, I think he came out after Paploo, but before Wicket. Let me know, though. I think he was, thinking back, I think he was my first Ewok. I think. At least first in the 21st century. And there we have my retelling of the Endor strike team, the Battle of Endor, at least the surface. And just reflecting back. And if you find the whole Ewoks and a small rebel team defeating a legion of stormtroopers unbelievable, that's fine. But at least there was a story there. You know, the whole Viet Cong defeating America was still fresh in everyone's mind in the early 80s after all the war was only not even quite a decade over. There was a story. You might not like it, or you might agree to disagree with it, or you might agree, but at least there was something. And I believe that's what's missing, especially from the battles in the newer films. For one thing, the newer battles just feel small. And they just feel disjointed without a message. And, I don't know, hard to say. it feels like even with small battles like Yavin or Hoth or Endor, they feel bigger. And you see the losses, and even if the good guys win, I mean, look at Yavin. They lost 2/3 or even 3/4 of their force. They had, around 36 starfighters and maybe 6 returned. And while they escaped Hoth, it was definitely at a cost. And we see even Ewoks dying in Return of the Jedi. And at the end of the film again, we see Ewoks post Stormtrooper snack time. So at least they weren't clones anymore. Otherwise, Rex over here might have had an issue with it. But no, I just found it enjoyable. And of course, it's fiction. And it's all subjective. So it doesn't really matter. As long as we all have fun, right? So, yeah, I wanted to get this done before this year closed out. Before the 40th anniversary had come and gone. So, hope you enjoyed it. Hope everyone is having a good New Year's Eve and survives New Year's Day. With that, this is Misha, and I'll catch you in the new year. And, oh Lord, let's hope 2024 is the best year since at least 2019. How about we hope that?